Children who lose parents are orphans. Bereaved spouses are widows. But what do you call parents who lose children? It seems telling to me there is no word in our language for our situation. It is unspeakable, and by extension, we are not supposed to exist.
I miss Daddy.
You miss Daddy?
Yeah, I know.
Whenever I've been asked over the years what my greatest fear in life is, I always say losing a child. I can't imagine anything worse. This summer, I came across a book by Jayson Greene called Once More We Saw Stars, and it is exactly on this topic.
So Once More We Saw Stars is the story of my daughter, Greta. She was born in 2013, and when she was 2 years old, she was tragically killed by a falling piece of masonry from an 8-story windowsill. It was a freakish accident. She was with her grandmother. My wife Stacy and I were just having a date night. Then the next day we were at the hospital with her. Sadly, she never recovered consciousness, and it was this sort of rupture in our lives that was so profound and so severe that we had to figure out a completely new way to live in the aftermath of the accident. But she was this beautiful person. And she was so bright and curious and all the things a 2-year-old is. And I wanted that to be what lingered in people's minds, not the fact that she was killed. And I think that was one of the main reasons I wrote this book, because I wanted it to be a testament to love and hope more than it was a testament to sadness and despair.
So you're faced with this heartbreaking tragedy. Where do you even start? Like what do you do?
In the beginning, you don't do anything. You're in shock. So that's stage one, for us at least. And then slowly, some of that wears away and the pain starts to come in. Unfortunately, it's a long process, and unfortunately, there's nothing that you can do to control it. It sort of happens to you. I think that the healing process that my wife and I undertook was a lot about acceptance. There's a point in the book where we go to a grief retreat, and it was hosted by a man named David Kessler. And one of the things that he says is that when people are in denial about the tragedy of their lives, they are, what he called, the metaphor he uses is that they're arguing with the snow. It's as if you're pointing at the snow on the ground and screaming at it, telling you that you don't want it to be there. But you have already lost that battle. The snow is falling, and it doesn't care about whether or not you want it there. And that is sort of the way that you have to adjust to reality after a trauma. And this is why support groups are important. This is why finding people who will look you in the eye and talk to you about it is important. This is why being alone is, you can't be alone. And it is such a strange paradox that when we are experiencing the world's most universal emotions, we feel our most alone.
And now you find out you're gonna have another child. Is it excitement? Is the first feeling fear because of the loss you experienced? Like, what do you go through?
It was as if someone had tripped a wire and all the emotions went off at once. I was angry, and I didn't even know why. But I think the feeling that I focused on very quickly was this fear that I was going to be some sort of trauma-haunted father figure to a new child. That I was not going to be the same father to this child. That I was somehow damaged, I was broken.
So you write in the book, I had already discovered this thought living in my heart. I wanted to be a father again. But I did not simply want to be a father again. I wanted to be Greta's father. I liked Greta's father. Greta's father was bursting with pride and happiness, even when he was exhausted and frazzled. So I want to know, who is Harrison's father?
It's a wonderful question. You don't know what kind of parent you're going to be to your child before you were holding that child. And I did not know who Harrison's father was going to be until I met Harrison. And to some degree, I'm still learning who Harrison's father is, but what I can report to you so far is that I'm very similar to the father I was for Greta. But the only thing that really changed was my awareness of trauma's ability to disrupt your life. I have this knowledge now encoded into me from firsthand experience that these terrible things can happen. But ultimately, great things will happen, and if terrible things happen, they will happen to me in such a way that I could not plan for them, even if I wanted to. So I might as well keep going.
What do you want Harrison to know about Greta?
That she lived, that we loved her very much, that she is his sister and always will be, even if he doesn't see her. And I also really want him to know her as a person. I want him to know who Greta was when she was here. If you're the brother of a presence that's never here, you can feel very much like you are always going to be the one who is messing up or doing something wrong, because the person who's never here can never do anything wrong. And that is a strange and fraught relationship to have to the idea of your sibling. So we really want to make sure that she's not a saint, to Harrison. She is a person. She was a huge pain in the ass. And we talk about that a lot.
I love that.
Because she,
Yes.
how could she not have been? She was a 2-year-old.
Yeah,
2-year-olds
yeah.
are enormous pains in the ass, right? Yeah.
But that's so thoughtful of you to make sure that he knows that, because you're right, when somebody passes, we put them on this pedestal, right?
Right.
And I love that you want her memory to be of who she really was, you know?
I want her memory to be palpable
Yeah.
to him, you know, but I also want him to know that when she was living, she was a person just like him. She was flawed and real and human, just like he is.
What do you think is the biggest lesson grief has taught you?
Grief has taught me that I am human. Grief has taught me that I am fallible, which doesn't mean I thought I was infallible before. But it has put me in touch with those parts of myself that are human and messy. Grief is such a human pain. That's the beautiful thing about it, right? We only grieve because we're social and we love. Greta is my daughter still. I will always be her father. I'll be her father until after I die. And that love is transformative, it's beautiful, and it will never go away. Grief contains love and tenderness as well, and compassion and empathy. Those are all feelings that are part of grief. And I think people think about grief as something you go through and then keep to one side and return to your life and move on from. But grief is also what happens afterward. Grief is what happens when you learn to remember that person with love. Grief is what happens when you tell the stories about that person's life and you're smiling and laughing, because that always happens. And that is still grief. But I really wanted the book to show how much love and hope can be inside of that emotion. I mean, I think you can sort of get a glimpse of the kind of book I wanted to write from the title, which is Once More We Saw Stars.
Even that, there's hope just
Right.
in that.
And the title actually comes from Dante's Inferno. It's the last line of the Inferno. So the Inferno is a story of a poet going down through every single level of hell, and then they arduously climb back up. But at the very, very end, they are crawling through a passageway. They're about to reach the surface. And Dante, the poet who is being led, looks up and sees some of the stars. And I loved that so, so much, because it implied that he hasn't escaped his pain. He hasn't escaped hell, but he can see for the first time the way out.
I love that. If somebody happens to come across this video right now and they just experience a loss, what would you say to them?
I would say that things are probably going to be dark for a while, but that if you are reaching out, seeking help in a moment like this, you are going to live through this. You're going to be okay, because you clearly want to live. And the feelings you are feeling are human feelings, and they are the right ones. That doesn't mean that they're pleasant, they're horrible, but that just means that you are gloriously alive. You are an alive person, and that means that someday, and it might not be soon, you will reconnect and you'll be able to grieve with love and not pain.
There's no wrong way to
There is no wrong way to grieve.
Yes, and every emotion you feel is valid and normal and probably healthy at that moment.
Yep.
Because like you said, you're human, you're supposed to feel these things.
Yep.
When somebody loses somebody, especially as a child, right? It's like we don't know the right thing to say, and do we ask about the child, or is that too painful? Should we never bring up the child?
Yeah.
How do you best support someone through grief?
First of all, you're not a bad person for feeling uncomfortable. I mean, I even said this to some people. I wouldn't know what to say to me either.
And that's okay. Sometimes you can literally say, I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to
but
say.
But bring the lasagna.
Bring lasagna or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they didn't eat.
To just show up. That's what's needed.
I think we humans tend to play this comparing game
Yeah.
when it comes to pain.
Yeah.
And I just think there's nothing good that comes out of that. You have to honor the pain you're going through.
You do. But really and truly, only you can determine the roadmap through your own grief. I'm not an expert. I'm not a grief expert. I'm only an expert on my own grief.
Yeah.
You know?
And your story shows that there is joy after loss. There is, like, life continues and you can actually feel like you're fully living again.
Yeah, you can.
At the end of the book, you're talking to Greta and you're talking to her about your son, Harrison. And you say, stay close to Harrison, okay? There are many things about his life that only you can teach him. He needs you. And I know you are a very old spirit by now, but please stay close to me. I need you too. And I will look for you wherever I go. And so that's what I was gonna ask you is, where do you see Greta now?
I see Greta whenever Harrison and I are playing in dirt. I don't know why, but I always hear her then. I saw her in the park shortly after she died, and I think that I have tended to find her wherever There are trees.
Yeah.
You know, and now, I mean, that's her on the cover. That's a picture I took of her
Oh my gosh.
on Coney Island the week before the accident,
Wow.
actually. And now whenever I go to bookstores, I see her. She's there.
My grandmother, who has passed, but she lost 4 out of 6 kids. And 3 of them died within hours, basically, of being born. But one of them was 5. My entire life, I heard her retell this story and just seeing her grief. And honestly, oh, I'm gonna cry. When I was reading this, I wished that she was still here so she could read this. I actually think this would have been so healthy for her to read. So thank you. Thank you for writing it for every other person who is struggling right now and needs this so badly.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you so much.